the Real Hustle Podcast, hosted by yours truly, Chris Kibblin. Real hustle, real people, real results. You can help support our podcast by checking out our Real Hustle gear. We have t-shirts, hoodies, tank tops, hats, and more. The Real Hustle gear is great for the gym or even a night out on the town. Let everyone know that you are a real hustler willing to do whatever it takes to get the job done. You can check us out right now at realhustle.com, and right now we're offering all of our listeners 10% off when you use the promo code podcast at checkout. Once again, that is podcast to receive 10% off your entire order. realhustle.com.
What's up, everybody? Chris Kibblin here over at the Real Hustle Podcast. So today I'm extremely excited because we have some very fabulous people in the studio. We have Nels and we have Cindy here, and I want to thank you both for coming. Hey, Nels, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having us on.
Okay, so why don't we do this, because we've got Nels and Cindy, and you guys have a pretty special cause of why you're here. But first, let's start out a little bit about you, and then Cindy, maybe we'll talk a little bit about you. So why don't we go with you, Nels, first?
Yeah, so I'm an accountant and I'm a runner,
okay,
and a wrestler. So there's probably three different things that may define me. But as you know, we're doing something pretty special here. And Cindy and I developed our relationship through accounting. So I got to know Cindy while working at a local firm here, Kirkring Barbario. And through that relationship, I learned about her brother, Chris Campbell. And I actually read a book that Cindy had given me, and actually didn't read it. I listened to it. I cheated because I listened to Audible. And because I listened to Audible, I heard Cindy talking about her brother, Chris Campbell's mission. And his mission was that he served as a U.S. Navy SEAL. Mm-hmm. And he had a mission that if he weren't to make it home, that he wanted 100,000 people to come together to help his brothers and sisters who did make it home and donate to Wounded Warrior Project. So I heard about that mission, and I heard about it back in 2019. And after hearing about that, I was still doing accounting at the time. I wasn't running. I wasn't doing anything, and I just couldn't get it out of my head. It was one of those things that just stuck in my head. And finally, in sometime during 2020, I thought I had done past running things for charitable causes, and I thought one way that I could help get Chris's mission out would be to run across the U.S. and not just run across the U.S., but attempt a world record for the fastest run across the U.S. And so in December of 2020, I called up Cindy and I said, what do you think about that idea? And so the rest is history. So the last couple of years have been going towards that goal. And now August 30th of this year, we'll start the run out of San Francisco and go to New York City. And it's me and Cindy, obviously, and we have a full team on board. So this is not a one-person show, not a two-person show. This is a lot of people show. And to get 100,000 contributions, which is Chris's request, it's going to be a lot more people show. So
right.
So that's why we're here today.
And Cindy, why don't you kind of tell us a little bit about yourself and about your brother's mission?
Well, thanks for having me on this podcast, Chris. So I'll start the way Nels did, and I'll say three things. I am an accountant, I'm an animal advocate, and I'm a Gold Star sister. And just to focus on the Gold Star sister, which is why we are here today, is because of my brother's last request. And Nels also mentioned he couldn't get it out of his head, and I couldn't get it out of my head or my heart. When someone leaves this over-the-top, crazy, wild request in notes that accompanied his will, and you're told about that, first of all, when Chris was killed, the shock sets in, and I feel like that stayed with me for a couple of years. But then beyond that, my mom's really good about, when you're hurting, help other people. And I feel like Chris gave us an anchor to the earth to say there are real men and women who are serving in our military who come home from being sent to war, and they're going to have challenges.
Exactly.
And we all have challenges in our lives. And I think that's something that can unite us, is realizing that every person has a story and every person has a challenge. And specifically for the military, when you've been to war and you come home, things are not the same. And I know that it impacted Chris greatly. I was sharing with Nels and Denise, his wife, through email. After Chris was killed, I spent many sleepless nights going back through his emails, and I could see the change in him. So for him to sit down and think, okay, if I die, what can I do to help the men and women who come home, who have served our country? And I just think of my brother sitting there and thinking of this, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so proud of him for doing this, because it was very different than the request he had actually talked to me about several years earlier in Virginia Beach. But it wasn't something, when I was told this, that, okay, well, let me be confrontational or find it. It was just, this is what he said. Okay, let's figure out how to make it happen. And so I think it was 4 years in, about 2,000 people had donated in his memory to Wounded Warrior Project. And then 4 years after that, a commercial was filmed, and now we're at just over 30,000 people who've donated to Wounded Warrior Project in his memory. And then in walks Nels. And I just think of, us meeting at this accounting firm and how things blossomed from there. So that's where I'll stop.
Okay. All right. So let's talk about this, because it's kind of interesting. So you both are CPAs, and I guess you both worked for the same company, right? Is that how you guys met?
Yes.
Okay.
And Cindy was my manager.
Cindy was your manager. Oh, see, we're learning more about this story. Well, so, it's kind of, and I was talking to you a little bit about this before we started. It's kind of interesting that we're doing this podcast and we're recording this podcast on Memorial Day. And, and Memorial Day is such an effective day in the U.S., and we're talking about Chris and his mission and what he's doing. And, so I don't know, Cindy, if you knew that I'm also an Army veteran. And so, my biggest thing is, it's always one of these things that I love giving back to the military. They did so much for me, and I love having this be a part of it. So thank you for letting me be a part of it. It's always... I love any time that we do something for our military. It's just so many people, they don't realize what you give up when you go into the military, and what you have to give up in order to say, hey, I'm writing this blank check for my life, and who knows if it's going to be cashed in, which is what Chris unfortunately went through. So thank you for allowing me to be part of this. So let's get started a little bit more of the fact that you decided that you were going to run across the country in Chris's honor. What made you want to do this, and why?
So this is something that I've been able to do in the past to help give a spotlight to different causes. So it's something I knew how to do, and I feel like it's a gift I have, I guess, to run long distances and ignore pain. But I felt like it had to be something a little bit bigger for Chris. And so just a run wasn't going to be good enough. And I think that with the record too, the record's important because it's something that will help. It will help Chris's name be said longer. One of the things that I know Cindy, one of the lines that she has when she signs off on her email and I'm probably going to say it wrong now, but it's that the greatest casualty is being forgotten. And I think it's important that we continue to say Chris's name, and so I think that this event is doing that. But more than that, this is an event that it's tough enough that it requires a lot more than me, and I think that also encompasses Chris's wish. There's one person can't get 100,000 contributions, and I know Cindy has wrote a blog, and it shows on the blog it has Chris's Buds shirt, and it has the team, the SEALs team locked arms, and I think similar to the way that they're locked arms, that to accomplish this Chris's goal and to accomplish this record run across the U.S., we got to lock arms with a lot of people to get this done. So there's kind of a theme running through all of it.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about the training part of it, because, I mean, if I recall correctly, if I remember, you had to run about 72 miles a day, right, for 42 days straight?
Yeah, so the record right now is 42 days, 6 hours, 30 minutes, and right around 72 miles a day. So I have to go faster than that. The guy who set the record, Pete Kostelnik, he's a very talented runner, and he's actually a faster runner than me. So for me to beat him, I'm going to have to put in longer days.
Okay.
So
what's it take you to run what do you think in 72 hours you're going to, I mean, or 72 miles, how long will you be running?
I've budgeted in my head about 15 hours per day.
Whew, that's tough.
Yeah, it's going to be a grind.
It's going to, I mean, now, are you going to have, will there be runners with you? Or is that going to, as you run, you're going to have, a group with you? Will people, pick up at certain places as you're running?
Yeah, so that's one of the things that we hope for. Because the more you feed off of people, and the more people that come out and help pace and that type of thing, the better it will be. So I'll feed off of that energy. So right now, we do have some people that are planning to come out at the start and through Colorado. And my home state is Iowa, so we'll have a good showing through Iowa. But there will be some lonely places in the desert of Nevada and that type of thing. So
where does that go through? So you start in California, right?
Right, San Francisco City Hall.
Okay, you start there, and then what's the travel plan? I mean, is there a certain roadway or?
Yeah, so there will be several different roads along the way, but it goes through 12 different states. So I can name them all out, but yeah, so it goes California, Nevada, Utah, Colorado, and then we go into Nebraska, Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and New York.
Wow. So that's pretty, I mean, it's pretty amazing to think that this is something, you're trying to do to beat, and just to have that stamina to beat something or to even do something like that. It's just the conditioning for somebody like that. It's just got to be incredible.
And we have a lot of benchmarks along the way. So we just did a Keys 100-mile race, and our mutual friend Chi was there as one of my crew members, along with my wife Denise, and that was a grind. This last weekend was a grind, and then we have so we've done several training events like that, and then next month will be an event called 6 Days in the Dome. So it's a 6-day race that will help as a benchmark for this run as well.
And you've also ran a while back, though, but you've ran from what? Is it Florida to D.C. or?
Right. I ran from Bradenton to the Cambodian Embassy in Washington, D.C.
And how long did that take you?
That took 35 days.
Wow. So you've run something like this in the past, but just, kind of building up.
Right. Right.
And then, and we'll get to Chris here in a minute, but I'm fascinated by the running part of it, just because you do a lot of training on the treadmill.
Yes.
And I'm like, how the heck do you stay on the treadmill that long? I can't do 10 minutes on the treadmill.
Yeah, the dreadmill.
Yes. It's tough, and I'm like, so how do you make that work?
So with the treadmill, I think I've heard people. So I do a lot of counting, and so when things get a little bit tough, I actually just count numbers over and over again. And I actually had to resort to doing that in the Keys this last weekend. My mind started going crazy this last weekend. It was like a spoke coming off of a wheel, so it had just started getting wobbly. And sometimes to pull myself back, which I do this on the treadmill, and I had to do it this last weekend, is I just start counting down minutes. So I count backwards and forwards just to 60.
Wow.
And I ended up doing it for about, it sounds crazy, but I ended up counting to 60 for about the last 6 hours of this last event, just to get my mind back on track. But little techniques like that, and what that does is it breaks it into more bite-sized chunks. So you're just kind of, every time you hit that 60, you're starting over again.
Right. That's crazy. So, Cindy, why don't we talk about Chris for a little bit? And because I know one of the things that you wanted to talk about was more about what Chris was like and more of a personal level than just being the Navy SEAL. Why don't you tell us a little bit about him?
Well, I also want to step back for a minute because you mentioned something when you first started asking Nels about when we met at Kirkgreen Barbario. I actually am not a CPA, so I just want to set the record straight.
Oh, I thought you were a CPA.
No,
no,
I'm not.
She's a very talented accountant.
Okay.
So I just think it's important to, state that.
Okay.
And then as far as Chris, it's interesting. One of the things that the blog on the Project Campbell's website has allowed me to do is share Chris's letters to me from basic training. And they were letters that I asked myself, why did I save these? They're just really wonderful letters. And my thought was at some point when he retired, and if he wanted to go back and read through them to see the progression of himself as a person, his military career, they would be available. And they really highlight his journey and who he was. And so for me, when I've gone back through them, especially after he died, there are so many little lessons that he provides. The one that I'm going to be sharing this weekend, it's his last letter to me. And he talks about he's so ready for this phase of basic training to be over. He's anxious to move on. But in order to become a Navy SEAL, he had to go through these steps. And it's also interesting to hear Nels. I mean, I just can't imagine how difficult this run is emotionally. And how he did the 60-second countdown and count forward and count back. And in this letter, Chris is talking about he had to go to his happy place, and somebody had sent him a little baggie of sand and seashells, and the recruiters at basic training, the recruit division commander, they allowed him to keep that. And so he kept it in his pocket and took it with him everywhere. And it reminded him of his happy place. So it's almost as though, while I don't know that counting back to 60 seconds and counting forward is a happy place, it just goes to show you that to do hard things, you have to go to a different place in your mind. And I do remember asking Chris at one time, like, how are you able to do this? Because to fast forward to Hell Week, I mean, they get 3 to 4 hours of sleep in 1 week.
Yeah, it's not much.
And he said it's physical, but it's also mental and emotional, and you have to do a lot of self-talk. And so I would encourage people to really go to the blog and read Chris's letters, because you really get a good insight into who he is as a person. And as we progress, as Nels progresses in his training up to August 30th of 2022, when the run starts, I'll be sharing, we transitioned from snail mail to email. So I'll be sharing a lot of his emails to me on his journey in his military career.
That's pretty awesome. And so going back to a little bit about Hell Week, I mean, I know that's one of the most toughest things to get through. And how was that for him? Did he talk about that at all, or?
Well, Chris, one of the things about him is he didn't focus on himself. When he was with us, he was truly with his family. If you need to rake leaves, if you need to do dishes, whatever, if you need to build a fence, he was there. He was never talking about himself. What I can tell you that I recall about Hell Week is leading up to it, because it's going to be super tough for him, is it was so ridiculous. Well, maybe not ridiculous, but I was living in Arizona at the time, and at home, I had quite a few pictures, and I had them all around. It was like this little homage to him. And at work, I had my own office. And so I had probably 10 different pictures that I had pinned up on my little wall. And so I was like, okay, every time I saw them, I was like, okay, you can do this. You can do this. You've got this. And so it was just my little way of trying to give him an edge, if that's even possible, which I know it's not. The work was all on him. But I do remember just waiting for that phone call, because he was so exhausted after it was over, and my dad called me and said he made it. And it was just such a feeling of elation and pride, because that really breaks you down, and
Right.
you see what you're made of.
And the thing is one thing, so my wife's a bodybuilder, and so she competes, and when you're a part of it, and when I'm not trying to compare this to going through Hell Week, but when you're a part of something like that, you almost feel like it's a part of you. And when they succeed, and it's such a awesome feeling, when they do make it, I just can only imagine that's what it must felt for you, because you do feel like you're a piece of it. You're going through part of it with them. And it's and it's just that once that you hit that final finish line, you're it's kind of an amazing feeling, because you want them to do well. You're almost all right, they can do this, and you're part of it. And it's just, I can only imagine I'm assuming, Cindy, that's probably what you went through in some of that, because you knew it, you want him to succeed, right? Because I mean, there's so many people who go through Hell Week to become a SEAL that don't make it, and there's a lot. I mean, they usually start. I mean, there's a good amount of people that start, and I think it's if I recall correctly from reading some of the stuff about it, I think they start 150, 200 people, and by the time they're done, it's 30 people that actually make it through Hell Week. And so the odds of you making it are so slim, because it's so tough. And and just to get to that point, and I believe, and like Cindy, you were saying, I think it's more mental than probably even physical, because you've got to train your mind to get to a certain point, and to understand that you're going to go through this craziness, and your body's ran down, but the mental part of I've got to get through this, or how do I get through this, is completely different. And so, and I mean, it's probably even in some ways for you running across the United States, you have to have a different mindset than just about most people, because most people look at it, and I can look at it from this point too, is you're nuts, and I look at it from okay, 72 miles a day at least, or running 15 hours, takes a certain mindset. It takes a certain level of all right, I'm going to do this. How am I going to do this? And I'm sitting there, I'm thinking, because I wouldn't want to run 72 feet, much less 72 miles, right? And I think, once we come to these types of points in our lives, it's just really coming up to the point, it's not so much the physical part, becomes the mind part.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you agree?
I would. Yeah. And I think part of the mind is, for me at least, is kind of having a why that's bigger than just doing the thing. So I know this weekend I was feeding a lot off of I was feeding a lot off of Chris. I know Cindy had posted a blog right before we the event this weekend, and this was one of those events that I was vomiting for about 40 miles straight.
Oh, jeez.
And I was not feeling very good. But Cindy had posted a blog that had her friend, Chris's friend Toby, had a quote in there that said, Chris was not the type of guy to quit. and that actually inspired me quite a bit. Because there were several times that my mind got weak this last weekend, and but I was able to dig a little bit deeper. But it's kind of like I had a little bit extra there. So if it was just me and it was just me doing something, kind of like this event, there's going to be several moments where my mind gets a little bit weak, and if I don't have if Chris's ask wasn't there. It would be very easy to just say, okay, this is it. Why am I doing this?
Right.
If my why am I doing this is big enough, then which in this case it is, then it keeps me going.
And that's got to be a good motivating factor, right? Because we're trying to get something out there to help a lot of veterans, trying to get Chris's message out there.
Yeah.
And that's part of the reason why I wanted to have you guys on the podcast is because, like, again, I believe in helping, and I've donated many times to the Wounded Warrior Project, and because it's a great cause, and so and I really wanted to help spread the word about it. So talk about that, because when did the Wounded, Cindy, if you could talk about the Wounded Warrior Project, when you started that and now it's grown, so we want to grow that. So what do people need to do to help donate to that, or help be a part of this, or what can we kind of give them a little bit of an idea?
So Nels has created a website, or his team, our team. It's called Project Campbell's Call. And if you go to that website, then there's a donate button. And if you click on that, then you can donate, and it will feed directly into the Wounded Warrior Project site. So we are working very closely with them to ensure all of these donations count towards Chris's last request. And the interesting thing, Nels, since you've put up the website and people have started donating, I think the last time it was updated maybe was a little, maybe a week ago. But at this point, almost 200 people have donated towards the goal of 100,000 people. And I think that's one of the things that it's very easy to think that it means $100,000, but it's not.
Right.
It's 100,000 people. And when I think of that, early on, I was like, that's 0.003% or 0.003 of the United States population. This is going to be easy. Well, I think Chris was, I think he knew it wouldn't be. And that's another thing. I'm like, oh my gosh, he is sending us on this journey. It certainly was a tether, an anchor for me, for my mom, for the rest who are working on achieving this last request. But, the war's been going on for quite some time, and it officially ended in August of last year, I believe. And there's still a cost to that, and there are real people who are suffering. And so I think that part of this journey is reaching 100,000 people to donate to Wounded Warrior Project to ensure that those services and programs that they provide, whether it's mental health programs, whether it's transitioning into a new career, or, a lot of people have physical challenges and they help with those as well. And there's not a cost to these veterans. So, it's pretty impressive that he did this.
It's pretty awesome. I know, and I've dealt with a lot of veterans. even in my other role in my life. So I'm a mortgage broker, so I do mortgages, and so I do a lot of VA loans, which are for veterans, and and I hear stories all the time, and I've got other veterans that I work with. I sit on a board for another veteran program, and so you hear the stories, especially when people have gone to war and coming back and trying to adjust. And it's very difficult. The 22 veterans that commit suicide every day, and it's just because they can't, the PSTD, right? I'm going to make sure I said that right. But basically they just can't come back, and it's tough for them to come back to civilian world, and so because one of the things about the military is when you go in and you're a part of it, it is such and not to take anything away from civilians, but it's such a different world because you're relying so much on other soldiers, and it becomes a brotherhood, and it becomes like you have to trust everyone, no matter what color you are, what religion you are, no matter what you're through. And it's very difficult, and it was one of the things that I learned. Like, you've done team, like the wrestling, so you have like a team aspect, and that's really, it's like an extreme team of being in something. And so and then when you come back, you don't have that anymore, and you don't have the type of, the civilian life is very different. There's no, there's teams, but it's not the same. It's not like I can trust you with my life. Like I'm trusting you with my life type of thing. And so that's it's just different, and it's very challenging. So that's one of the great things that I see with a lot of these charities, and and this is why it's such a great cause to help them, because we need to give more back. It's so sad that we have so many veterans that are homeless or hungry, after they've gone and they've given, gone to war for us, or given up, a lot of them have lost, body parts and that kind of thing. And they come back, and unfortunately they just can't readjust. Mm-hmm. So this is a great cause for that, and so are you starting to see some national attention from this as well?
So far we've gotten a lot of local attention. I think as we start the national campaign, I'm guessing that we'll get national attention. But so far it's been mostly local.
Because I think once that hits, that national attention hits, that you're doing this, I think that's where you're going to start seeing the flood of people donating. Right. I think with what's going on in America right now, and with the stuff that we're seeing right now, people are starting to come bond more. Let's just say that, right? And it's a good cause, and a lot of people want to help veterans, and a lot of people want to give to veterans. So this is such a good cause to give back and cheer you on too, right? And so that's the thing that I think is really cool about this.
Yeah, and the other thing is what was cool about Chris picking 100,000 contributions instead of $100,000 is it doesn't matter how much the dollar amount is. Right. So anybody can be a part of this, and I think that was another cool feature that it was just that he wanted 100,000 people to take action to help, and so it is amazing his thought that went into it.
So Cindy, why don't you tell us about what your involvement is going to be going forward with helping us get to Chris's 100,000 people? And are you involved in helping Nels here too? Are you going to be a part of that, or how's that going to work?
So I really prefer to write and stay behind the scenes.
Okay.
And so this is really pushing me outside of my comfort zone.
And we appreciate that, by the way.
Well, so my preference is to share my brother's letters through a blog, and yeah, I'm sorry. That's kind of it.
Okay, that's
I
fine.
mean, I will certainly do if Nels is on the road and I'm able to be on the road and join them. Like if I can provide encouragement or, be a water runner or a fuel runner, I'll certainly do that. But I prefer to do the work behind the scenes.
Got you. Okay.
Yeah.
So some people like behind the scenes stuff. So, and we appreciate you being here. So we were just talking a little bit ago about when you just ran the keys and how you kind of got sick a little bit, and how actually you think that might make you better going forward in your race, in your run here. So kind of walk us a little bit through that, because I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, so there were a couple lessons learned from this last event. One is listen to your team. So my team was actually telling me to slow down. The weather was a lot hotter than we had expected. It was reaching about 100. It got up to, most of the day was in the 100 heat index, and it got up to 106. And then we had on top of that, the sun was coming off the asphalt as well. So it got really hot. And because of that, and because I didn't slow my pace down and listen to my team, I got overheated. And so I got overheated pretty good around mile 30 and just started losing everything that I put in my body pretty much from the beginning of the day. And didn't stop vomiting till about mile 70.
Wow.
It just was kind of one of those things. But I do think because that's an obstacle that I was able to overcome and our team was able to overcome, that's something that we can use as fuel we learned from on this little race, and it'll help us if we encounter something like that down the road, including learn more techniques on how to cool my body temperature down faster as well.
Yeah, because you figure if you could run it, and we were talking about this earlier, about if you could run in Florida, right? I mean, Florida's hot.
Right.
And, the humidity is tough here. And if you could probably get through that, you should be pretty good, because going the route that you're going, I mean, you shouldn't have the same humidity, and it should be a lot cooler going that route, especially because you're hitting that fall weather when it's starting in August. So
yeah, I think I don't see us encountering that humidity again. We may see some hot days, but it won't be that same humidity.
The same humidity. So one of the questions I was thinking about is that cost. I'm sure there's a big cost for all this, right?
Right.
So are you self-funding that, or are you getting other people to help get that? Or
so we're getting sponsored. So actually, one of the guests that was on here before, the Kassela Group, Robert Kassela, was one of our day sponsors.
Okay.
So we're offering sponsorship for each day of the run, and then a finale day we still have a sponsorship availability, and we still have sponsorship availability for several other days as well. So people can kind of put their names out. Companies can put their names out and sponsor a day of this journey.
Okay, because that's what I was wondering. I was like, I'm sure this can't be cheap to do all this, and I was like, so I was wondering how the cost, because you got you have people out there, you've got volunteers out there, plus the cost of just getting out there and then going through all this.
But one of the cool things about having people sponsor, like companies sponsor, and having them be partners, is that they also get to be a part of this. So we get to develop even more relationships with people as their partners with us especially on their given day. It's kind of fun because we have a really great social media team. Gabby Jarmasco, she is a professor over at USF, has really done an excellent job in getting people involved with this. So she will do a great job of communicating our nice partnerships with our sponsors, and so I think it'll be fun for all parties involved.
Yeah, I mean, that's the cool thing, right? So you can be part of this and be part of history, and be part of something that's, that's unique.
Right.
And it's for a good cause. I mean, so one of the things that I wanted to ask you guys about, so when I was kind of reading some of the stuff that you guys sent me, and I don't know if Cindy, if you want to talk about this, but there is, I guess, another wrestler that was involved that you played with or something, and from Hawaii or something like that, or
Yes.
So do you want to talk about that, or?
So I guess I'll mention. So this person. So his name is Grant Nakamura. Took Cindy and I's relationship probably a little bit further. So one day we were working. We were working a little bit late into the evening, and I think I said, Cindy, I'm cutting out early. I've got dinner with a good friend of mine who I hadn't seen since college, and so his name is Grant Nakamura. He had come all the way from Maui, and so when I think I told Cindy that he was a police officer as well, and so Cindy was like, Maui, police officer. I wonder if he knows this family. So, and I think Cindy knows that my memory isn't always wonderful, so she wrote down the name of the Vickers family on a note, so that I could take it and show it to Grant, just to ask if he knew the family, and he did. He did know the family closely, because they're also not only are they involved together on the police force in Maui, but they are big wrestlers as well. The family's involved in the wrestling community as well.
Okay. So
that was kind of a neat connection. So the connection with Cindy and the Vickers family is Craig Vickers was on the helicopter with Chris. So that was the connection between those two. And Cindy, you have spent time with the members of the Vickers family as well, right? So you.
Yes. So in 2012, the family members of those who were involved in the crash went to another memorial service in Arlington, in Virginia, and I met Craig Vickers there, but it was 8 months in, and you're just still in very much of a shock. And fortunately, Rob, though, remembered meeting me, and several years later, the Navy SEAL Foundation was hosting their first sibling retreat for brothers and sisters of the men who had been, who died in service. And Rob thankfully remembered meeting me. And so it was kind of a funny story because he knew that my mom and his mom had a really good connection. And so his mom had reached out to mine and said, my son is trying to get in touch with your daughter because there's a sibling event going on. And so my mom had given me Rob's email address, and it sounded like I was 5 years old. I was like, my mom and your mom know one another, and I understand there's this event going on. I was like, oh my gosh, I was 5. But Rob was a lifesaver for me. And then meeting his other siblings, Michelle, he has a wonderful sister, and Mark, who, and then Vance, they're on the, Mark is now retired, but yeah. And so that family has just been phenomenal. The Aloha spirit is real. And Chris was born in Hawaii, and so I have my little Aloha shirt on today. And my this logo for the Hawaiian Island Creations, that was his first tattoo on the nape of his neck, because he was born in Hawaii at Tripler Army Medical Center on the island of Oahu, and he used to say, "I'm a Hawaiian Island creation." So, yeah. And then the interesting thing I didn't know, Grant Nakamura, when I went to Pearl City Elementary in Oahu, and my kindergarten teacher, her name was Mrs. Nakamura.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow. Small world, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of crazy. So one of the questions that I wanted to ask you, Cindy, is why did Chris want to become a Navy SEAL? I'm always interested to find that out.
So he wanted to play baseball. And in the blog on Project Campbell's called, there's one that's titled Dream On. And I read his essay after he was killed. I had had it for years. And then I read it and I was like, oh my gosh, this is heartbreaking. So he wanted to be a professional baseball player. And he loved the Oakland A's. I think it was the Bash brothers.
Yep, I remember them.
So anyway, there's some circumstances that resulted in him not being able to play professional baseball. And my understanding is Chris and my other brother Lee, they were fantastic swimmers. And so they were constantly at the pool, at the beach. And he, on one of his lifeguard experiences, he met a couple of team guys. And I remember coming home from college and going into our little tiny den, and we had a little tiny black and white TV when my mom, I was in 11th grade when my mom finally said, okay, we can have a TV, or actually my dad brought it back from Okinawa. And I walked in, and, it was back in the day when you had VCRs, and I walked into the room and Chris was watching these guys. They were all in face paint and it was very dark. And I was like, what are you watching? And he's like, Navy SEALs. And he was like really serious. He's like, I'm going to be a Navy SEAL. And I had no idea what that was. I just remember seeing people in the dark, in the water with face paint, and it was frightening. This is my baby brother. I know what the cost of going to, serving in the military is. And so that was my introduction to him expressing interest in becoming a Navy SEAL.
It's interesting. It's funny. It's like as you find your calling, and what you think, and they come up with that, and they come up to wanting to be a Navy SEAL. It's just, it's incredible, to go down that path and how hard it is to even be a Navy SEAL, and do what he's done. So it's an incredible story, and I appreciate you sharing everything with us. So, I know we're getting ready to do this big run and this big thing, and I'm just like, so anything else you guys want to share about Chris, or anything else you want to share about the run?
Well, I think one of the things that Cindy had mentioned earlier about Chris was, I think you asked if he had talked about buds, and what she said was that when he was with you, he was there, and that's where he was. And that's one of the things that I've learned about Chris through his letters and through Cindy's blogs. And I've tried to apply that because it's helped me because when you're doing a run or and then when you're switching and you're meeting people, I think it's so cool to be somebody who like I'm trying to embrace that, to be wherever I am, and it's I don't think it comes as naturally to me. It's not a thing that's easy to do, and it's something that obviously Chris was very good at, and I think that's one of the things that drew me to Chris the most, about hearing the stories about Chris, is just his ability to be present. And that's something that through this that I hope that I can be more present. And so that's the one thing I'd like to add.
It's in this fast-paced world that we live in nowadays, and you see it all the time, and it's almost, I hate to say it, it's kind of sad. Luckily when my boys were growing up, we didn't have cell phones back then, and so they didn't get cell phones until they were much older. But it's like people aren't present anymore. You'll go out to restaurants and people will be on their phones. They won't be talking to one another. And it's very difficult, and to be present to whoever you're talking to, or whoever that you're around. And it's like, it's difficult in this world now. Mm-hmm. And my wife has gotten on me about it, because I can remember, being in my business, it's like, well, I can't miss a phone call, or I can't miss a text message because that's business, right? But I couldn't take an hour out of my day to sit there and be present with her. And so, I've tried to get better with this, and it's very difficult in this world. And I think, you've got so much with social media and everything else, and everybody's got this attention span of 30 seconds
Right.
now, and it's just like, okay, well, what's next? And so it is difficult. And I think, that's a great story, because I think we all need to learn that better or work on that better, is to be present, to listen to people. I think we take that for granted nowadays, and so and I think it's a work in progress, and I wish I was better at it, because I'm not. So I think this is, unless you guys have anything else to share. So what we'll do is if everybody that's listening, if you guys, and what's the website that they can go to? Is it Project Campbell?
Project Campbell's Call.com.
So if we can get everybody to go on there that is listening, go in there and donate. It doesn't matter how much the donation is. We're just trying to get to 100,000 donations. Right. So anybody who can go donate to that, we would appreciate it. We wish you luck, and in your journey. And it's super exciting to sit here and talk to somebody that's trying to do something that's really, kind of astounding to think about, somebody trying to run across America in that short period of time and break a world record like that. So when was the last time that record was broken?
2016.
So 2016. So it's been holding up for a little bit.
And the one before that was 1980.
Really?
So it's has not been broken frequently.
Okay. So that's a tough one. So, and it's tough to think about that. And again, going back all to the mental part of it. So if you guys don't have anything else to share, we'll just end it here, and I appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Chris. We appreciate you having us.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you, Cindy. I appreciate you jumping on with us.
You're welcome.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Bye.